The truth nobody likes to hear. Nobody likes hearing this. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't sound encouraging. It doesn't come wrapped in motivation or comfort. But it's the truth. Your life looks the way it does right now because of you. Not because of luck. Not because of people holding you back. Not because the world is unfair, though sometimes it is. But because every result you see today started with a version of you from the past. That thought lands heavy. It tightens your chest a little. It makes you want to argue, to explain, to defend yourself. And that reaction is human. Because accepting responsibility feels like accepting blame. But they are not the same. The weight of realization. When this truth first hits, it doesn't feel empowering. It feels uncomfortable. You start replaying moments. Decisions you delayed. Opportunities you ignored. Habits you kept even when you knew better. You remember times you said, "I'll start tomorrow." Times you blamed circumstances. Times you waited for permission that never came. And for a moment, regret tries to take over. That's why most people reject this truth. Because it forces you to sit with yourself, without excuses. But if you stay in that discomfort just a little longer, something else appears. Not guilt. Power. The past version of you. Every version of your life was built by a version of you. The you who avoided hard conversations. The you who chose comfort over effort. The you who stayed quiet when you should have spoken. The you who spoke when you should have listened. Not because you were weak. Because you were learning. Because you were surviving. Because you were doing the best you could with what you knew at the time. That past version of you wasn't bad. They were just limited. Limited by fear. Limited by habits. Limited by belief. And those limits shaped your reality. Why blame feels easier than ownership. Blame is comforting. It gives your pain somewhere to go. If it's the system's fault, you don't have to change. If it's other people's fault, you don't have to grow. If it's bad luck, you don't have to look inward. Blame protects your ego. But it steals your future. Because the moment you give credit for your life to external forces, you also give away control. And control is where change lives. Two people, same circumstances. Think about it. You've seen people come from the same background. Same city, same struggles, same limitations. And end up in completely different places. One grows bitter. One grows stronger. One waits. One adapts. One complains. One builds. The difference is not the world. It's who they chose to become inside the world. Success doesn't begin with opportunity. It begins with capacity. And capacity is built internally. The moment responsibility becomes freedom. There's a moment, quiet but powerful, when responsibility stops feeling like blame. It becomes freedom. Because if your choices created your current life, then new choices can create a different one. You're no longer stuck waiting for permission, motivation, circumstances to change. You become the starting point. That's when the narrative shifts. Not from, "Why is this happening to me?" but to, "What can I do next?" The daily you versus the dream you. Most people focus on the dream version of themselves. The confident one. The successful one. The disciplined one. But dreams don't build lives. Habits do. The version of you that matters most is not who you want to be. It's who you are on. Ordinary mornings. Stressful days. Quiet nights. How you react when nobody is watching. How you speak to yourself when things go wrong. How you behave when motivation is gone. That version of you is shaping everything. Small choices, big consequences. Life is rarely changed by one dramatic decision. It's changed by small ones repeated daily. Choosing to scroll instead of work. Delay instead of start. React instead of reflect. Quit instead of adjust. None of these feel life-altering in the moment. But compounded over time, they become your reality. And the opposite is also true. Small disciplined choices compound too. Why this truth feels heavy at first. This realization can feel overwhelming. Because it removes the illusion of rescue. No one is coming to save you. No moment will magically arrive. No version of luck will suddenly appear and fix everything. And that can feel lonely. But it's also honest. And honesty is the foundation of growth. Once you accept that your life starts with you, you stop waiting. From victim to builder. There's a quiet transition that happens when people accept this truth. They stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" They stop rehearsing the past. They stop explaining their pain. They stop needing validation for their struggle. They turn inward, not in self-criticism but in self-leadership. They become builders instead of victims. Change doesn't require confidence. Here's something important. You don't need confidence to change. You don't need clarity. You don't need motivation. You You don't need to feel ready. You only need responsibility. Responsibility says, I may not like where I am, but I accept that it's mine to change. That mindset alone shifts behavior. The quiet work of becoming better. Becoming better is not dramatic. It's quiet. It looks like saying no more often, keeping small promises to yourself, choosing progress over comfort, learning instead of complaining. No one claps for this phase. No one notices at first. But this is where everything begins to shift. When you stop arguing with reality. Many people stay stuck because they argue with reality. This shouldn't be this hard. I shouldn't have to try this much. It shouldn't take this long. But reality doesn't care what should be. It only responds to action. When you stop arguing and start adjusting, progress accelerates. The power of self-honesty. Self-honesty is uncomfortable, but it's clean. It removes confusion. Instead of wondering why nothing changes, you see clearly what you avoid, what you repeat, what you tolerate. And once you see it, you can change it. Clarity replaces chaos. You are not your past self. Accepting responsibility doesn't mean being stuck in guilt. It means releasing it. Your past self did what they could with what they knew. Your present self knows more. And your future depends on what you do with that knowledge. Growth is not punishment. It's evolution. The shift from hoping to building. Hope feels good. But hope without action is a trap. When success starts with you, hope becomes strategy. You don't hope things improve. You build improvement. You don't wait for confidence. You earn it. You don't wish for change. You create it. Why this truth is actually kind. This truth may sound harsh, but it's generous. Because it gives you control. It says, you are not powerless. You are not broken. You are not stuck forever. You are simply at a point in your process. And processes can be changed. The first step is not big. You don't need a complete life overhaul. You need one honest step. One habit adjusted. One decision faced. One responsibility accepted. Momentum doesn't start with speed. It starts with direction. When you finally see yourself clearly, there comes a moment when you stop lying to yourself. Not harshly, not cruelly, just clearly. You see your patterns, your excuses, your potential. And instead of feeling ashamed, you feel grounded. Because clarity is solid ground. Success starts with you. Nobody likes hearing this. But it's the truth. Your life looks the way it does right now because of you. Not because of luck. Not because of people holding you back. Not because the world is unfair, though sometimes it is. But because every result you see today started with a version of you from the past. That thought can feel heavy. Almost uncomfortable. But it's also powerful. Because if success starts with you, then change does too. And that means no matter where you are right now, your story is still being written. By the choices you make next. When life isn't going the way we want, the first instinct is to look outward. It happens so fast you don't even notice it. One disappointing moment, one plan that falls apart, one closed door, and the mind immediately starts scanning for a reason that lives outside of you. Because that's what feels safest. If the problem is out there, then your pain has a clear target. If the problem is out there, then your disappointment feels justified. If the problem is out there, then you don't have to question yourself too deeply. So we blame. We blame the economy. Because it's real. Because prices rise. Because jobs shift. Because stability feels fragile and unfair. We blame the system. Because it's complicated. Because it's slow. Because it favors some people and leaves others behind. Because it's easier to believe the game is rigged than to accept that we may have to grow stronger. We blame other people. Because people disappoint. Because they break promises. Because they don't support us the way we hoped. Because they misunderstand us, underestimate us, or simply don't care. We blame bad timing. Because timing hurts the most. It's the invisible thief. You feel ready, but life isn't. You feel motivated, but circumstances aren't aligned. You feel like you arrived at the right place, just at the wrong moment. And sometimes those things are real obstacles. That's important to say clearly. Some people do start with less. Some people face heavier burdens. Some people deal with unfairness that is not their fault. There are real barriers in the world. Real limitations. Real circumstances that can slow you down, block you, exhaust you, or drain your hope. So this isn't about pretending the world is always fair. It's about something more uncomfortable. Something deeper. Because even when obstacles are real, two people can face the same situation and end up in completely different places. You've seen it before even if you didn't put words to it. Two co-workers in the same company. Same salary range. Same workload. Same manager. Same pressure. One of them grows, learns, builds respect, gains trust, finds solutions, improves their life over time. The other stays stuck in a loop. Complaining, blaming, drifting, repeating the same frustrations year after year, almost as if time is passing but nothing is changing. Two friends from the same neighborhood. Same starting line. Same schools. Same resources. One starts building habits, learns skills, develops discipline. Moves forward slowly then faster. The other stays trapped, not because they're less talented but because they never change internally. Two people experience heartbreak. One uses the pain as a teacher. They reflect. They heal. They learn to communicate better. They become more grounded. The other becomes bitter, distrustful, reactive. They carry their wound like a weapon and wonder why life keeps giving them the same outcome with a different face. Same situation, different ending. So what's the difference? The uncomfortable part is this. The difference is not the situation. It's who they become inside it. That sentence is easy to agree with in theory, and hard to accept in practice. Because once you accept it, you lose a certain kind of comfort. You lose the comfort of saying, "It's not my fault," and stopping there. And again, sometimes it truly isn't your fault. But if you stop at blame, even when the blame is justified, your life remains in someone else's hands. You become dependent on conditions, dependent on people, dependent on luck, dependent on timing. And that's a fragile place to live. Because conditions can change overnight. People can leave. Luck comes and goes. Timing rarely waits for you. So the real question becomes, when the world is not cooperating, who do you become? Do you become resentful? Do you become passive? Do you become cynical? Do you become the person who always has an explanation but never has results? Or do you become stronger? Not louder. Not angrier. Not tougher in a performative way. Stronger internally. More disciplined. More focused. More skilled. More emotionally stable. More resilient. More honest. Because that's the part nobody can take from you. And that's where success actually begins. Success doesn't begin with opportunity. This is another truth people struggle with, because we love the idea of opportunity as the main ingredient. We love to believe that the right chance will arrive and change everything. And opportunities do matter. A door can open and change a life. A connection can accelerate progress. A lucky break can create momentum. But opportunity without capacity is like pouring water into a cracked cup. It doesn't matter how much you receive if you can't hold it. So success doesn't begin with opportunity. It begins with capacity. Capacity means what you can handle, what you can sustain, what you can carry without breaking, what you can manage without losing yourself. Capacity is the internal strength to handle external growth. Because life has a strange pattern. When you're not ready, you pray for more. When you get more, it exposes what you haven't built yet. More money exposes weak discipline. More responsibility exposes weak structure. More visibility exposes weak emotional control. More pressure exposes weak habits. More freedom exposes weak self-leadership. That's why some people get what they wanted, and still lose. They didn't lose because opportunity was bad. They lost because their internal capacity wasn't ready to hold it. Capacity is built internally. Not through luck. Not through wishing. Not through waiting. Internally means in the quiet moments. It's built when you decide to learn instead of complain. When you choose to focus instead of distract yourself. When you build routines instead of relying on motivation. When you practice patience instead of reacting. When you take responsibility instead of creating a list of excuses. And let's be honest, this is not a glamorous process. You don't get applause for building capacity. No one claps when you wake up early to study. No one celebrates your quiet consistency. No one sees the internal battles where you choose discipline over comfort. Capacity is built in places where no one is watching. It's built in the way you respond when you're stressed. Do you spiral? Do you shut down? Do you blame? Do you escape into distractions? Or do you regulate yourself? Do you breathe? Do you slow down? Do you face the problem? Do you take the next step even if it's small? Capacity is built in the way you handle disappointment. Some people use disappointment as evidence that life is against them. They collect it like proof. They hold it up and say, "See? This is why I can't." Other people use disappointment as feedback. They ask, "What can I learn from this? What can I adjust? What part of me needs to grow?" Same disappointment. Different internal response. Capacity is built in the way you handle boredom. Because most progress is boring. It's repetition. It's routine. It's small improvements. It's doing the same simple actions again and again. The people who win aren't always the most talented. They're often the ones who can tolerate boredom without quitting. Capacity is built in the way you handle fear. Fear isn't just fear of failure. Sometimes it's fear of being seen. Fear of trying and not being good. Fear of becoming responsible for your own results. When fear shows up, some people retreat into excuses. It's not the right time. I need more information. I'll start when I'm ready. But ready rarely comes first. Readiness is built through action. Capacity is built when you act while you're still uncertain. That's why two people can face the same obstacle and end up in different places. Because one person sees the obstacle and thinks, this is proof I should stop. The other person sees the obstacle and thinks, this is training. They both feel the pressure. But they translate it differently. One becomes smaller inside it. The other becomes bigger. This is where your identity is formed. Not when things are easy. Not when you're winning. But when you're under pressure. When you don't get what you want. When life says no. When the timing is wrong. When people disappoint you. When the system feels unfair. That's when the real work begins. The work of becoming the person who can still move forward. Because if you build capacity internally, something powerful happens. Your life stops being controlled by circumstances. Even if the economy is bad, you adapt. Even if the system is slow, you build skills. Even if people don't help, you learn self-reliance. Even if timing is wrong, you prepare until it becomes right. You stop being fragile. You stop needing life to be perfect before you can progress. And that is real freedom. Not freedom from struggle. Freedom through strength. You become the kind of person who can handle more. More opportunity. More responsibility. More pressure. More success. Because success isn't just about getting what you want. It's about being able to sustain it. So yes, sometimes obstacles are real. But the bigger truth is this. Your future isn't decided by the obstacle. It's decided by what the obstacle builds inside you. Success doesn't begin with opportunity. It begins with capacity. And capacity is built internally, quietly, daily, one decision at a time. And once you build that, even when life doesn't go the way you want, you don't fall apart. You grow. Look at your habits, not your goals, not your intentions, your habits. Because goals are what you talk about. Intentions are what you promise yourself. But habits are what you actually live. They're quiet, automatic, repetitive, and they're shaping your life far more than the dreams you keep in your head. If you really want to understand where your life is going, don't ask what you want. Ask what you do, especially when no one is watching. The everyday version of you. There's a version of you that shows up on big days. When motivation is high. When something important is on the line. When people are watching. But that version isn't the one building your life. The one that matters is the everyday version. The version that wakes up when the alarm goes off. Or hits snooze. Or scrolls for 20 minutes before even sitting up. The version that reacts when something stressful happens. Do you tense up immediately? Do you get defensive? Do you shut down? Do you reach for distraction? The version that talks to yourself when no one else can hear it. When you mess up. When you feel behind. When you're tired. When you compare your life to someone else's. And the version that handles discomfort. Do you lean into it? Or escape it the moment it shows up? That version of you, the one formed by small, repeated choices, is the one shaping everything. Not the version you hope to be someday. The version you practice being today. Why goals feel so powerful and so misleading? Goals feel exciting because they live in the future. They're clean. They're perfect. They're untouched by reality. You imagine the result, not the process. You imagine confidence, not the awkward beginning. You imagine success, not the boring repetition. You imagine discipline, not the days you don't feel like showing up. Goals are easy to fall in love with because they don't demand anything yet. Habits do. Habits ask for something today. And tomorrow. And the day after that. They don't care how motivated you feel. They don't care how big your dream is. They quietly ask, what are you training yourself to do? How you wake up is a habit. Think about how you start your day. Not how you want to start it. How you actually do. Do you wake up and immediately check your phone? Do you give your attention away before you've even taken a breath? Do you rush, already feeling behind? Or do you give yourself a moment of stillness? Do you choose intention over impulse, even for a minute? This isn't about perfection. It's about pattern. Because mornings don't just start your day. They reinforce who's in control. Your awareness or your habits. And whatever you practice first thing in the morning sets the tone for how you respond to everything else. Stress reveals training. Stress doesn't create behavior. It reveals it. When pressure hits, you don't suddenly become someone new. You fall back on what you've practiced. If you've practiced avoidance, you avoid. If you've practiced panic, you panic. If you've practiced grounding yourself, you ground yourself. That's why stressful moments feel so revealing. You see yourself clearly, sometimes uncomfortably clearly. And instead of judging that version of yourself, the better question is, what have I been training? Because reactions are habits too. The voice no one hears. One of the most powerful habits you have is how you talk to yourself. Not out loud. Not on social media. In your own mind. When you make a mistake, what's the first thing you say to yourself? When something doesn't work out, what story do you tell? Is it harsh? Is it patient? Is it honest but kind? Or is it constantly reminding you of everything you think you lack? That inner voice doesn't just describe your reality. It shapes it. If you train yourself to speak with constant criticism, your nervous system stays on edge. If you train yourself to speak with responsibility and compassion, you build resilience. And over time, that voice becomes your default. Not because you chose it once, but because you repeated it. Discomfort is the real test. Everyone wants growth. Very few people want discomfort. But the truth is, discomfort is the doorway. How you handle it matters more than how much you want success. When something feels hard, awkward, or uncertain, what do? Do you immediately distract yourself? Do you quit quietly? Do you convince yourself it wasn't that important anyway? Or do you stay? Do you breathe through the urge to escape? Do you let yourself feel the resistance without obeying it? That response is a habit. And every time you choose comfort over growth, you're training yourself to avoid the very thing that would change your life. The version of you that wins. Here's the realization most people miss. You don't rise to the level of your dreams. You fall to the level of who you've trained yourself to be. In moments that matter, you won't magically become disciplined if you haven't practiced discipline. You won't suddenly become calm if you've trained chaos. You won't suddenly become confident if you've rehearsed self-doubt for years. You'll default to your habits. That's not a flaw. That's how humans work. And once you understand that, everything becomes clearer. Why motivation keeps letting you down. Motivation feels powerful, but it's unreliable. It comes and goes. It depends on mood, sleep, environment, emotions. Habits don't care about any of that. They run in the background. That's why people with strong habits seem consistent, even when life gets messy. They're not stronger than you. They're more practiced. They've trained themselves to act even when it's uncomfortable. Not through grand gestures, but through repetition. Success doesn't require a new life. This part surprises people. Success doesn't require a new life. You don't need a new city, a new job, a new personality, a dramatic reset. You need a new you. And new you doesn't mean reinventing everything at once. It means changing what you repeatedly do. The way you start your day. The way you respond to stress. The way you speak to yourself. The way you treat discomfort. Small changes practiced daily reshape identity. Identity is built backwards. Most people try to change their life by changing their goals. But real change happens when you change your identity. And identity isn't formed by what you say you are. It's formed by what you repeatedly prove. If you show up consistently, you become someone who shows up. If you keep promises to yourself, you become someone you trust. If you face discomfort instead of avoiding it, you become resilient. That's how identity works. Backward. Through action first, belief second. The quiet power of training. Training doesn't feel heroic. It feels repetitive. It feels ordinary. It feels like doing the same small thing again when no one is clapping. But training is powerful because it compounds. One habit doesn't change your life. But a collection of habits changes who you are. And who you are determines what you can sustain. Looking at your life honestly. If you're unhappy with where you are, don't attack yourself. Observe yourself. Look at your habits with curiosity, not shame. What am I training myself to do every day? What am I reinforcing? What am I tolerating? What am I avoiding? Those answers are uncomfortable, but they're also freeing. Because habits can be changed. And changing habits changes trajectory. Becoming the person your dreams need. Your dreams already know who they require. They don't need a perfect version of you. They need a trained one. Someone who can handle boredom. Someone who can handle discomfort. Someone who can handle repetition. Someone who can handle doubt without quitting. That person isn't born. They're built. Through habits. The shift that changes everything. The shift isn't dramatic. It's subtle. You stop obsessing over outcomes and start focusing on behavior. You stop asking, why isn't my life changing? And start asking, what am I practicing? You stop chasing motivation and start building structure. You stop waiting to feel different and start acting different. And slowly, quietly, something changes. You do. The final truth. Look at your habits, not your goals, not your intentions, your habits. How you wake up, how you react to stress, how you talk to yourself when no one's listening, how you handle discomfort. That version of you, the everyday version, is the one shaping your life. And here's the key realization most people miss. You don't rise to the level of your dreams. You fall to the level of who you've trained yourself to be. Success doesn't require a new life. It requires a new you. And that new you begins with one habit. Practice today. Why success never fixes what's missing inside. Most people try to build success first. They chase the visible things. Money, status, recognition. They believe that once those things arrive, everything else will fall into place. Confidence will show up naturally. Discipline will magically appear. Clarity will finally settle in. They think success will change who they are. So they run toward it. Fast, relentless, hungry. And for a while that hunger feels productive. The promise people make to themselves. You can hear it in the quiet promises people make. Once I make more money, I'll feel secure. Once people respect me, I'll be confident. Once I make it, I'll slow down and fix myself. Once I succeed, I'll finally feel like enough. These promises aren't foolish. They're human. Because when you're struggling, it's easy to believe the struggle is the problem. It's easy to think the external pressure is what's holding you back. So you aim outward. You tell yourself, just get there first. Fix yourself later. But later rarely comes. The first taste of success. Sometimes success actually arrives. Not the fantasy version, but enough to feel real. Maybe the money starts coming in. Maybe your name gets recognized. Maybe people listen when you speak. Maybe doors open that were once closed. At first, it feels validating. You think, this is it. This is what I was missing. But then something strange happens. The excitement fades faster than you expected. The pressure increases. The expectations grow. The spotlight gets brighter. And instead of feeling stronger, you feel exposed. Because success doesn't replace what's missing inside you. It magnifies it. Success is a multiplier. This is the part no one talks about. Success doesn't change your inner state. It amplifies it. Whatever habits, fears, and beliefs you had before success, get louder after it. If you lack discipline, success creates chaos. Your schedule fills up. Opportunities multiply. Responsibilities stack. And without discipline, everything feels out of control. You start reacting instead of leading. You burn energy trying to keep up. You say yes to too much. You break promises to yourself. From the outside, it looks like you're winning. On the inside, it feels like you're drowning. If you lack self-respect, success creates fear. Fear of losing it. Fear of being exposed. Fear of not being enough to maintain it. Every compliment feels temporary. Every win feels fragile. You start tying your worth to performance. You become anxious, defensive, and guarded. You don't enjoy success, you protect it. And that protection costs you peace. If you lack purpose, success feels empty. You reach the goal and there's no feeling waiting for you on the other side. No fulfillment. No meaning. No sense of arrival. Just another target. Another chase. Another thing to prove. So you raise the bar again. And again. And again. Not because you're ambitious, but because you're avoiding the quiet question. Why am I doing all this? Why fixing it later never works? People assume success gives them time and space to work on themselves. But success rarely slows life down. It speeds it up. More people need you. More decisions demand attention. More pressure sits on your shoulders. The internal work you avoided before success becomes harder after it. Because now you're busy. Now you're visible. Now mistakes feel more expensive. So instead of building discipline, you outsource control. Instead of building confidence, you chase reassurance. Instead of building clarity, you follow momentum. And momentum without direction eventually leads nowhere. Real success starts internally. That's why real success always starts internally. Not because inner work is trendy. Not because it sounds deep. But because it's practical. You don't build success to become disciplined. You build discipline so success doesn't destroy you. You don't build success to gain confidence. You build self-trust so confidence has something real to stand on. You don't build success to feel whole. You build character so success has meaning. Discipline before results. Discipline comes before results, not after. Discipline is not about punishment. It's about reliability. It's the quiet agreement you keep with yourself when no one is watching. Showing up when you don't feel like it. Doing the small thing consistently. choosing structure over chaos. Without discipline, success becomes unstable. You rise quickly, but you wobble constantly. With discipline, even small progress compounds. And when success arrives, you can handle it, because your foundation was built before the pressure. Self-trust before confidence. Confidence is loud. Self-trust is quiet. Confidence says, I believe in myself. Self-trust says, I've proven it. You don't build self-trust by winning publicly. You build it by keeping private promises. Doing what you said you would do. Even when it's boring. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when no one applauds. Confidence without self-trust is fragile. It depends on feedback. It rises with praise. It collapses with criticism. But self-trust doesn't shake easily. Because it's rooted in experience, not opinion. Character before recognition. Recognition is powerful. Feels good to be seen. To be acknowledged. To be respected. But recognition before character is dangerous. Because it rewards behavior you haven't fully examined yet. It tells you this works before you ask, is this right? Character is what guides you when recognition tempts you to compromise. It's what keeps your values intact when shortcuts appear. It's what allows you to say no to opportunities that don't align with who you want to be. Without character, success can slowly turn you into someone you don't respect. And that's a heavy price to pay. The quiet work no one applauds. Internal success is quiet. No one claps when you wake up early and do the work. No one celebrates when you keep a promise to yourself. No one sees the moment you choose integrity over convenience. But those moments matter more than the visible wins. Because they shape who you become. They decide whether success feels empowering or suffocating. When success comes too early, sometimes success comes before you're ready. And instead of saving you, it exposes you. It exposes your lack of boundaries. Your unhealed insecurities. Your need for validation. Your fear of slowing down. You start living for outcomes instead of principles. And even when you're winning, you don't feel safe. Because deep down, you know the foundation is shaky. Why some people have it all and still feel lost. This is why some people have it all and still feel empty. Not because success is meaningless, but because it arrived before alignment. Before discipline was built. Before self-respect was solid. Before purpose was clear. Success didn't complete them. It magnified what was missing. The right order changes everything. When you build internally first, success feels different. Discipline gives you structure. Self-trust gives you calm. Character gives you direction. So when opportunities appear, you don't chase them blindly. You choose. You don't fear losing success. You know you can rebuild it. You don't need recognition to feel worthy. You know who you are without it. You don't feel empty at the top. Because you didn't climb to escape yourself. You climbed as yourself. Otherwise, even success won't save you. This is the truth people avoid. Otherwise, even success won't save you. It won't heal insecurity. It won't replace discipline. It won't give you purpose. It will only make the absence louder. That's why the strongest people don't rush success. They prepare for it. They build the internal systems first. They become the person who can hold what they're asking for. The real definition of success. Real success isn't just achievement. It's stability under pressure. Peace in progress. Confidence without arrogance. Discipline without obsession. It's success that doesn't cost you yourself. And that kind of success always starts internally. Most people try to build success first. Money, status, recognition. Then they hope confidence, discipline, and clarity will follow. But it never works that way. Because success amplifies who you already are. If you lack discipline, success creates chaos. If you lack self-respect, success creates fear. If you lack purpose, success feels empty. That's why real success always starts internally. You build discipline before results. Self-trust before confidence. Character before recognition. Otherwise, even success won't save you. Becoming your best self doesn't happen in one big moment. It doesn't arrive with dramatic music, a sudden breakthrough, or a single decision that instantly changes everything. It doesn't look like a movie scene where life finally clicks, and from that point on, everything becomes easier. Real change is quieter than that. So quiet, in fact, that most people miss it. Because becoming your best self doesn't happen in one big moment. It happens in quiet choices. The kind of choices no one claps for. The kind that don't feel powerful when you're making them. The kind that feel so small, you almost convince yourself they don't matter. Almost. The myth of the big moment. Most people are waiting. Waiting for motivation. Waiting for confidence. Waiting for the right time. Waiting for a moment that feels big enough to justify change. They imagine that one day they'll wake up different, clear, focused, ready. But days like that rarely come. Life doesn't pause and give you perfect conditions. It keeps moving, messy, loud, unpredictable. And while you're waiting for a big moment, your life is being shaped anyway. Not by dramatic decisions, but by the small ones you make when nothing special is happening. Quiet choices don't feel important. Quiet choices don't announce themselves. They don't feel heroic. They feel ordinary. They show up on days that blur together. On mornings that feel the same as yesterday. On evenings when you're tired and just want the day to be over. That's when the real work appears. Not as a challenge but as a choice. The choice to get up when you don't feel like it. The alarm goes off. Not the inspiring kind of morning. Not the new chapter kind of day. Just a regular one. Your body feels heavy. Your mind starts listing reasons to stay where you are. You didn't sleep well. You deserve rest. Missing one day won't matter. And honestly, those thoughts make sense. Getting up doesn't feel powerful. It feels uncomfortable. But this is where quiet growth begins. Not in how you feel, but in what you do despite how you feel. You sit up anyway. You put your feet on the floor anyway. Not because you're motivated, because you chose to show up. That choice doesn't change your life instantly, but it changes you, slightly. And slightly is enough. The choice to stay consistent when nobody is watching. Consistency feels different in private. When no one is watching, there's no pressure to perform. No image to protect. No praise to chase. Just you and your standards. And this is where most people loosen their grip. Because consistency without recognition feels pointless. You don't post it. You don't announce it. You don't get feedback. You just do the thing. Again. And again. And again. This is where discipline is built, not through excitement but through repetition. You're proving something quietly. I don't need an audience to keep my word. That proof stays with you. It becomes trust. And self-trust is one of the strongest forms of confidence there is. The choice to choose effort over comfort. Comfort is persuasive. It doesn't demand. It whispers. It tells you. Rest a little longer. Scroll a little more. Start tomorrow. Comfort isn't evil. But when it becomes your default, growth disappears. Effort, on the other hand, rarely feels inviting. It feels like resistance, like friction, like inconvenience. Choosing effort doesn't mean choosing suffering. It means choosing progress over ease. It means asking quietly, what would move me forward, even slightly right now? And then doing that, even when comfort is louder. Especially when comfort is louder. The choice to improve one small thing today. This is where people overthink. They want to change everything at once. Their habits, their mindset, their routines, their entire life. And when they can't do it all, they do nothing. But becoming your best self doesn't require massive daily upgrades. It requires small, honest improvements. One small thing today. Maybe you drink more water. Maybe you respond calmly instead of reacting. Maybe you do 10 minutes instead of 0. Maybe you stop one bad habit earlier than usual. It doesn't look impressive, but it's real. And real progress compounds. Why these choices feel insignificant? Here's the frustrating part. These choices don't feel life-changing when you make them. You don't feel transformed after waking up on time once. You don't feel different after one workout. You don't feel successful after one focused hour. So your brain tells you, this isn't working. But growth doesn't announce itself. It hides. It works silently in the background, stacking effort on effort. What feels insignificant today becomes undeniable later. The power of repetition. One choice means very little, but repeated daily, it compounds. Just like interest, you don't notice it at first. In the beginning, the numbers barely move. And that's where most people quit. Because they confuse invisible progress with no progress. But compound growth doesn't care about your impatience. It rewards consistency, not intensity. Day after day, those small choices begin to reshape you. Your reactions soften. Your habits stabilize. Your confidence grows quietly. Not because you changed overnight, but because you stopped quitting on ordinary days. Ordinary days are the real test. Special days are easy. On special days, you're motivated. On special days, energy is high. On special days, effort feels exciting. But special days are rare. Life is mostly ordinary. And ordinary days are where your future is decided. What you do on days that feel average. On days that feel boring. On days that feel heavy for no clear reason. Those days don't look important. But they are everything. Because ordinary days make up most of your life. Your future self is being built right now. Not someday. Not when things calm down. Not when you feel ready. Not when life gives you a break. Right now. Your future self is being built by how you respond when you're tired, how you act when no one is watching, how you treat small responsibilities, how you handle discomfort. Every ordinary day is a vote for who you're becoming. And no vote feels powerful on its own. But together, they decide everything. The gap between who you are and who you want to be. Most people think the gap between their current self and their best self is huge. They imagine it requires extreme change. But the gap is usually smaller than they think. It's not a leap. It's a series of steps. Small ones. Taken consistently. And the only reason that gap feels overwhelming is because people try to cross it all at once. But you don't cross it in one move. You cross it one ordinary day at a time. Learning to respect small effort. This is a mindset shift. You stop asking, was today impressive? And you start asking, was today honest? Did I do what I said I would? Even when it felt small. Did I choose effort once? Even briefly? Did I move slightly forward? Instead of staying still? If the answer is yes, the day mattered. Even if it didn't feel special. When you finally notice the change. One day without warning you notice something. You handle stress better. You don't quit as quickly. You don't negotiate with yourself as much. You trust your ability to follow through. And you pause. Because it didn't happen all at once. There was no single breakthrough. Just a pattern of quiet choices you kept making when no one was watching. And suddenly, the version of you that once felt impossible feels familiar. The quiet confidence that follows. There's a different kind of confidence that comes from this process. Not loud. Not arrogant. Not performative. It's calm. It comes from knowing. I can rely on myself. Not because you're perfect, but because you've proven, over and over, that you show up. Even on ordinary days. Especially on ordinary days. And becoming your best self doesn't happen in one big moment. It happens in quiet choices. The choice to get up when you don't feel like it. The choice to stay consistent when nobody is watching. The choice to choose effort over comfort. The choice to improve one small thing today. These choices feel insignificant. But repeated daily, they compound. Your future self is being built right now. By what you do on ordinary days. Not special ones. And if you can learn to respect the power of those ordinary days, you won't need a big moment. Because you'll already be becoming who you were meant to be. Discipline isn't punishment. That idea alone already challenges most of what people believe. Because somewhere along the way discipline became associated with pain. With restriction. With force. With doing things you hate just to become someone you're supposed to be. When people hear the word discipline, they imagine clenched teeth. Early alarms. Cold routines. A life stripped of comfort. They imagine someone being hard on themselves. But real discipline doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like respect. Respect for your time. Respect for your energy. Respect for the future version of you who has to live with the choices you make today. That shift, from punishment to respect, is where everything changes. Because when discipline feels like punishment, you resist it. You rebel against it. You look for ways around it. But when discipline feels like respect, you lean into it. You protect it. You don't feel oppressed by it, you feel supported by it. Every time you do what you promised yourself, you send a message. Not to the world. Not to social media. Not to anyone watching. To yourself. A quiet, internal message that says, I can trust myself. That message might seem small, almost insignificant. But it's not. It's foundational. Think about how much of your stress comes from broken trust. Not with others, but with yourself. You say you'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and you don't. You say you'll finish something. You stop halfway. You promise you'll take care of yourself. You ignore your own needs. And each time, something subtle happens. You don't consciously say, I can't trust myself. But your behavior starts to reflect it. You stop setting serious goals because you don't believe you'll follow through. You stop planning long-term because you assume you'll quit. You stop expecting much from yourself. Not because you lack potential, but because your internal track record feels unreliable. And that unreliability creates tension. You carry it quietly. It shows up as anxiety, as overthinking, as guilt you can't fully explain. Because when you don't trust yourself, every decision feels heavier. You hesitate more. You doubt more. You second-guess everything. Discipline repairs that trust. Not in dramatic ways. In small, consistent ones. Every time you do what you said you would, even when it's inconvenient, you're making a deposit into self-trust. You wake up when you said you would. You finish the task you said you'd finish. You show up when no one is checking. and your mind notices, it starts to relax. Because there's comfort in knowing your own word means something. But the opposite is also true. Every time you break promises to yourself, you send another message. My word doesn't matter. That message hurts more than most people realize. Because when your word doesn't matter to you, it slowly stops matching to your subconscious. You stop feeling urgency around your own goals. You stop feeling pressure to keep commitments. You stop respecting deadlines you set for yourself. Not because you're lazy. Because you've taught yourself, repeatedly, that nothing happens when you don't follow through. No consequence. No correction. No repair. So the cycle continues. You promise. You break it. You feel disappointed. You move on without fixing the root. And over time, that disappointment becomes familiar, comfortable even. You start living with a low-grade sense of regret, not sharp enough to change but heavy enough to drain you. That's why discipline isn't about forcing pain. Pain already exists when you keep disappointing yourself. Discipline reduces pain. It removes the friction between who you say you are and how you live. It aligns intention with action. And alignment creates peace. Success grows where self-trust lives. Not talent. Not intelligence. Not luck. Self-trust. Because when you trust yourself, you don't need external pressure. You don't need someone watching. You don't need motivation speeches. You don't need constant reminders. You move when you say you will. And that changes how you move through the world. Think about the people you admire, not celebrities but people in your real life. The ones who seem grounded, stable, reliable. They're not frantic. They're not constantly starting over. They're not always explaining themselves. They have an internal order. When they commit, they follow through. And because of that, their lives feel less chaotic. They're not necessarily doing more. They're just wasting less energy fighting themselves. That's what discipline gives you. Not a harsher life. A simpler one. When discipline is rooted in respect, your relationship with effort changes. You stop asking, do I feel like it? And start asking, what did I commit to? Not in a rigid way. In a grounded way. You don't treat your past self like an inconvenience. You honor the promises that version of you made. And that builds continuity. You stop living as disconnected versions of yourself. Morning you, evening you, future you, all pulling in different directions. You become one person. That unity is powerful. That's why discipline is not about becoming someone who can endure pain. It's about becoming someone you don't disappoint. That sentence alone can change how you see everything. Because disappointment hurts more than effort. Effort is temporary. Disappointment lingers. Effort ends when the task is done. Disappointment stays with you, quietly shaping how you see yourself. So when you choose discipline, you're not choosing suffering. You're choosing self-respect over self-neglect. You're choosing long-term calm over short-term comfort. You're choosing to be someone who shows up for themselves, even imperfectly. And that version of you moves differently through life. They walk with less hesitation. They speak with less doubt. They decide faster. Not because they're fearless. Because they're not fighting themselves anymore. When you trust yourself, you don't need constant reassurance. You don't need to overthink every choice. You know that even if things get hard, you'll handle it. Because you always have. That trust creates a quiet confidence. Not the loud kind. Not the performative kind. The kind that doesn't need validation. It shows up in how you hold yourself. You don't rush as much. You don't panic as easily. You don't collapse at the first sign of difficulty. Because discipline has taught you something deeper than productivity. You are reliable. And that reliability becomes your foundation. From there, growth feels safer. You can take bigger risks because you trust your follow-through. You can aim higher because you know you won't abandon yourself halfway. You can be patient because you've seen progress compound before. All of that comes from one simple habit repeated over time. Doing what you promised yourself. Not perfectly. Consistently. Even when it's boring. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when no one sees it. Especially then. Because discipline practiced in private shapes character in public. You don't announce it. You don't dramatize it. You just live differently. You stop negotiating with yourself over small things. You stop breaking deals with yourself and pretending it doesn't matter. You start treating your own word as something valuable. Something worth keeping. And slowly, almost without noticing, your identity shifts. You stop seeing discipline as something external you need to impose. It becomes part of who you are. I'm someone who follows through. I'm someone who respects my commitments. I'm someone I can rely on. Those aren't affirmations. They're conclusions drawn from evidence. From lived experience. From hundreds of small moments where you chose respect over excuses. And once you become that person, life feels different. Not easier, but steadier. Challenges don't throw you off as easily. Setbacks don't break your momentum. You don't spiral every time things don't go perfectly. Because discipline has given you something stronger than motivation. Self-trust. And self-trust is rare. Most people don't lack ambition. They lack belief in their own consistency. They've been burned too many times by themselves. So they stop expecting much. But you don't have to live that way. You can rebuild trust. Not by promising bigger things. By keeping smaller ones. By choosing discipline not as punishment, but as care. Care for your future. Care for your mental peace. Care for the person you're becoming. Every promise you keep is a brick. And eventually, those bricks form something solid. A sense of stability inside you. A version of you that doesn't collapse under pressure. A version of you that moves with intention. That version doesn't rush. Doesn't beg. Doesn't doubt their own word. They move differently through life. With less noise. Less friction. Less regret. Because they've learned the truth most people never stop to question. Discipline isn't punishment. It's respect. And respect, especially self-respect, is the soil where success quietly grows. There's a conversation happening inside your head every day. Not just thoughts floating by. A real conversation. A voice that comments on everything you do, and everything you don't do. Is there when you wake up and reach for your phone? Is there when you look in the mirror? Is there when you open your laptop, when you sit in traffic, when you feel tired, when someone says something that hits a nerve? And most people never challenge it. They hear it so often that it starts to sound like truth. Not an opinion. Not a habit. Truth. The voice that sounds like you. It starts small. You get an idea. A goal. A desire to change something about your life. Maybe you want to start a business. Maybe you want to learn a skill. Maybe you want to get in shape. Maybe you want to finally take your life seriously. And right when the spark appears, the voice shows up. Not yelling. Not dramatic. Calm. Almost protective. I'm not ready yet. I'll start tomorrow. I'm not like those people. The scary part is how familiar it feels. It sounds like you. Same tone. Same rhythm. Same language you've used your whole life. So you assume it is you. You assume it's wisdom. But it's not wisdom. It's programming. How identity gets quietly built. Most people think identity is something big. A major decision. A public declaration. A life-changing event. But identity is usually built in small moments. In your kitchen at night when you know you should do the work, and you don't. In your car when you tell yourself you'll try again next week. In the morning when you hit snooze and say, I'll fix it later. Every time you listen to that voice, you are agreeing with it. And every agreement becomes a brick. A brick that builds a story. Not a story you tell people. A story you live. I'm not consistent. I'm the kind of person who starts but doesn't finish. I'm not disciplined. I'm behind. I'm not built for that. That voice quietly shapes identity. And identity shapes behavior. The moment you notice it. For most people, it takes years to notice. They don't realize they're not failing because they lack talent. They're failing because they have a voice inside them that's been writing the script the whole time. Then one day something happens. It might be a small moment. Maybe you watch someone else succeed. Someone close to you. Someone who wasn't special. Someone who didn't have superpowers. And you feel a mix of emotions you can't fully name. Pride for them. But also, discomfort. Because their success makes a question appear in your mind that you've avoided for a long time. If they can change, why haven't I? And right away the voice tries to protect you from the pain of that question. It's different for them. They got lucky. They have support. They're more confident. They're just built differently. It offers explanations like gifts. Not because it wants to help you grow. But because it wants to keep you comfortable. Because growth demands risk. And that voice hates risk. The difference with people who succeed. But the people who succeed do something different. They don't silence the voice. That's important. They don't pretend fear doesn't exist. They don't fake confidence 24/7. They don't live in some permanent state of motivation. They still hear the same thoughts. I'm not ready. This might not work. What if I fail? What will people think? They hear it. They just don't obey it. They don't treat the voice like a leader. They treat it like a suggestion. And when the voice speaks, they respond. They rewrite it. Rewriting starts with one honest sentence. Rewriting your inner voice doesn't start with hype. It starts with honesty. You begin by catching the voice in real time. Like this. You're about to procrastinate and the thought comes. I'll start tomorrow. And for the first time, you pause. You don't fight it. You just ask, is that true? Because tomorrow is usually a lie you tell yourself to feel better today. Tomorrow becomes a moving target. It never arrives. So you answer the thought with something real, not emotional. Real. I can start small today. That's a rewrite. That's how it begins. The first new phrase, I'll figure it out. This phrase matters because it does something simple. It turns uncertainty into action. Most people stop because they don't have every step planned. They say, I don't know how. I don't know enough. I need more time. But successful people replace that with, I'll figure it out. Not because they know everything, but because they trust their ability to learn. That one sentence shifts your posture. You stop waiting to feel ready. You become the kind of person who moves while learning. You become someone who doesn't need perfect conditions. You become someone who adapts. And adaptation is what wins in real life. The second new phrase, I do hard things. This one is deeper. Because most people don't avoid hard things because they're lazy. They avoid hard things because hard things threaten their self-image. If you try and fail, you might have to admit you're not as capable as you hoped. So the voice protects you by keeping you from trying at all. It says, stay safe. Stay comfortable. Don't risk looking foolish. But I do hard things is a new identity statement. It's not saying hard things are easy. It's saying you're the type of person who doesn't run. It's saying, I can feel fear and still move. I can struggle and still show up. I can be tired and still do what matters. That sentence doesn't remove difficulty. It gives you dignity inside difficulty. The third new phrase, I'm becoming better daily. This is where real transformation happens. Because your old voice probably wanted instant results. It wanted proof fast. And when proof didn't arrive quickly, it said, see? This isn't working. You're wasting time. You're not improving. But, I'm becoming better daily shifts your focus from outcomes to process. It teaches your mind to respect progress. To notice small wins. To understand that growth isn't a dramatic explosion. It's a quiet climb. One day at a time. One repetition at a time. One choice at a time. And when your mind starts looking for improvement instead of perfection, you stay longer. And staying longer changes everything. The day your behavior changes. Here's the interesting part. The day your behavior changes isn't always the day you feel confident. Sometimes you still feel the old voice. Sometimes it still says, you're not like those people. But now, instead of accepting it as truth, you respond. You rewrite. You say, I'm becoming one of those people. And then you do the smallest action that matches that identity. You write one paragraph. You do 10 minutes of practice. You walk instead of sitting. You make the call you've been avoiding. You start messy instead of waiting to start perfect. And that's when the real shift happens. Your actions begin to support your new voice. And once actions support the voice gets stronger. Because now it has evidence. Your inner voice becomes your outer results. This is the part most people miss. They think results come first and confidence comes after. But often it's the opposite. Your inner voice shapes your choices. Your choices shape your habits. Your habits shape your results. So yes, your inner voice becomes your outer results. If your voice says, I'm not ready, you delay. If your voice says, I always quit, you quit faster. If your voice says, I'm not like them, you never join the effort. But if your voice says, I'll figure it out, you start. If your voice says, I do hard things, you persist. If your voice says, I'm becoming better daily, you stay consistent. And consistency is what creates visible change. Not talent. Not luck. Consistency. The quiet power of rewriting. Rewriting your inner voice doesn't happen once. It happens every day. Sometimes every hour. It's like taking control of a steering wheel you didn't realize you'd handed away. And at first it feels forced. Because the old voice has been rehearsed for years. But over time the new voice becomes natural. Not because you're pretending, because you're becoming. And one day you realize something surprising. You're still you. But you're a version of you that doesn't collapse under doubt. A version of you that responds instead of obeys. A version of you that chooses the future over comfort. The ending that doesn't feel like an ending. There's a conversation happening inside your head every day. Most people never challenge it. I'm not ready yet. I'll start tomorrow. I'm not like those people. That voice quietly shapes identity. But the people who succeed do something different. They don't silence the voice. They rewrite it. They replace it with, I'll figure it out. I do hard things. I'm becoming better daily. Because your inner voice becomes your outer results. Change the voice, and behavior follows. Becoming your best self is uncomfortable. Not, a little inconvenient, uncomfortable. Not, I had a long day, uncomfortable. The real kind. The kind that gets under your skin and makes you question yourself in ways you didn't expect. The kind that doesn't announce itself as growth because most of the time, growth just feels like pressure. There's no version of growth without resistance. That's the part people don't show. They show the before and after. The transformation. The glow up. The I finally did it moment. They don't show the in-between. The messy middle. The nights where you stare at the ceiling and wonder if you're wasting your time. The mornings where you wake up with that tight feeling in your chest, like you're carrying something heavy and invisible. The awkward phase where you're not who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. And in that phase, you will feel things that are hard to admit out loud. You will feel behind. Not because you're actually behind everyone, but because once you start growing, you begin noticing how much you still don't know. You see other people moving faster. You see people who look more confident. You see the highlight reels, the finished products, the polished results. And suddenly your own progress feels small. You'll sit there thinking, why is it taking me this long? Why does it feel like everyone else has it figured out? Why do I still feel like a beginner? You will feel unsure. Because growth requires decisions and decisions require faith. And sometimes you don't have enough evidence yet to feel fully confident. You're doing the work, but you can't see the finish line. You're planting seeds in a season where nothing is visible above the ground. So the mind does what it always does in uncertainty. It starts asking questions. What if I'm wrong? What if this doesn't work? What if I'm not built for this? What if I'm embarrassing myself? And then you will feel exposed. That one hits deep. Because becoming your best self means becoming more visible, not necessarily to the world but to yourself. It's like turning on a light in a room you've avoided. Suddenly you see the habits that were holding you back. You see the excuses you've been using. You see the ways you've been playing small, pretending it's just being realistic. And when you finally try, when you really try, there's nowhere to hide. Trying means you can fail. Trying means someone can judge you. Trying means you can discover limits you didn't want to face. That exposure makes people retreat. It makes people go back to what feels safe. Because comfort is familiar. And familiar feels like protection. But here's the truth nobody wants to accept until life forces them to. Feeling behind, unsure, and exposed doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're expanding. It means you've stepped outside the version of yourself that was built to survive. Now you're building the version that can lead. And that process is uncomfortable by design. Because comfort keeps you familiar. Comfort keeps you in patterns you already understand even if they don't serve you. Comfort keeps you surrounded by the same thoughts, the same routines, the same small decisions that make your life predictable. Comfort feels like control. But it's also a trap. Because the moment you decide to grow, you step into a space where you don't have control yet. You step into uncertainty. You step into learning. You step into moments where you don't look skilled or smooth or certain. You look like a beginner. And being a beginner is humbling. It's frustrating. It's uncomfortable. That's why so many people quit early. Not because they don't want success. Because they don't want discomfort. They want growth that feels good. But discomfort is the price of becoming more than you were. I remember a season in my life where I wanted change so badly it felt like it was burning inside me. Not the kind of change you talk about casually. Real change. The kind that forces you to confront habits you've used for years. The kind that changes how you spend your time, what you tolerate, who you listen to, what you run from. I had reached that point where staying the same hurt more than trying. And I thought that was the hard part. I thought the hard part was deciding. I didn't understand that the decision is just the doorway. The real work begins after. Because the first time you seriously try to become better, healthier, stronger, more focused, more disciplined, you meet resistance immediately. Not resistance from the world, necessarily. Resistance from you. From the version of you that's built on comfort. You'll promise yourself you'll wake up earlier, and suddenly your bed feels 10 times warmer. You'll say you're going to focus, and suddenly every distraction feels urgent. You'll decide to improve your life, and suddenly your mind produces every reason why it's too late, too hard, too risky. That version of you isn't evil. It's protective. It was created to keep you safe. But safety and growth don't live in the same room. So when you start moving toward growth, that protective part of you gets loud. It starts whispering. Just rest today. Start tomorrow. You're doing fine. Why push so hard? People like you don't do things like that. You're going to fail. You're going to look stupid. And then, right there, you have a choice. You can take that discomfort as a sign to stop. Or you can take it as proof that something is changing. Because discomfort isn't always a warning. Sometimes it's a doorway. Sometimes it's the feeling of your identity stretching. Sometimes it's the muscle tearing slightly before it rebuilds stronger. Sometimes it's the moment your old self tries to pull you back because your new self is unfamiliar. That's what expanding feels like. It doesn't feel like victory at first. It feels like pressure. Like awkwardness. Like not being sure. Like being exposed. And if you don't understand that, you'll interpret it as failure. You'll think, if it's this hard, it must not be for me. But that's not true. If it's hard, it means you're doing something real. The question is, will you run from it? Or will you learn to move with it? Success belongs to people who don't run from discomfort, but learn to move with it. That doesn't mean they enjoy it. It doesn't mean they're fearless. It means they stop being surprised by discomfort. They stop treating it like an emergency. They stop letting it decide their direction. They let it ride in the passenger seat, not the driver's seat. They wake up and feel the resistance and they don't panic. They don't negotiate. They don't dramatize it. They simply say, okay, this is part of it. They feel behind and they keep moving. They feel unsure and they keep learning. They feel exposed and they keep showing up. Not because it's easy, because that's the only way it works. I think about discomfort like walking into cold water. At first, your body screams no. Every instinct tells you to step back. But if you breathe and keep moving, something changes. Your body adjusts. The cold doesn't disappear, but it becomes manageable. And then you realize, the fear was louder than the reality. Discomfort is similar. At first it shocks you. It makes you want to retreat. But if you stay present, if you keep moving, you start building tolerance. And tolerance becomes strength. You start trusting yourself in a new way. Because now you're not the person who only moves when it feels comfortable. You're the person who can move even when it doesn't. That's power. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that builds a life. And one day you look back and realize something. The discomfort didn't break you. It shaped you. The moments you thought were proof you weren't good enough were actually proof you were becoming someone new. That's why comfort keeps you familiar. It keeps you in the same identity, the same habits, the same mindset. Even if you complain about your life, comfort will still try to keep it unchanged. Because the familiar is predictable. Even pain can be familiar. Even dissatisfaction can become a comfort zone. But discomfort builds you stronger. Because discomfort demands a response. It forces you to adapt. It forces you to learn. It forces you to become resourceful. It forces you to develop patience and resilience, things you can't develop in comfort. Comfort doesn't teach you courage. Discomfort does. Comfort doesn't teach you discipline. Discomfort does. Comfort doesn't teach you self-trust. Discomfort does. Because self-trust is built when you prove to yourself that you can handle hard things. Not once. Repeatedly. In small ways. Day after day. That's how becoming your best self actually happens. Not through a dramatic transformation. Through consistent discomfort. Through choosing the hard thing again and again until it becomes normal. Until you stop seeing it as hard and start seeing it as who you are. And that's when growth feels different. You still feel resistance, but it no longer scares you. You still feel unsure, but it doesn't stop you. You still feel exposed, but you don't hide. You move anyway. Because you understand the truth now. Those feelings don't mean you're failing. They mean you're expanding. So when you feel behind, don't rush. Don't compare. Just keep moving. When you feel unsure, don't quit. Learn. Adjust. When you feel exposed, don't retreat. Stand. Breathe. Stay present. Because the discomfort you're feeling is not the enemy. It's the training ground. It's the evidence that you've stepped beyond the familiar. And success belongs to the people who don't run from discomfort, but learn to move with it. Slowly. Steadily. With your heart pounding sometimes. With doubts visiting you sometimes. With fear sitting in the room sometimes. But still moving. Because that's what growth looks like in real life. Uncomfortable. Messy. Honest. And worth it. Competing with yesterday. Comparison feels productive. At first. It feels like motivation. Like awareness. Like you're staying sharp. You tell yourself you're just keeping an eye on the field. Just making sure you're not falling behind. But comparison isn't neutral. It's poison. And the worst part is how quietly it works. When comparison disguises itself as motivation, it usually starts small. You're scrolling. Not even looking for anything specific. Just filling a few minutes. And then you see it. Someone your age. Someone in your field. Someone who started after you. They're announcing something. A milestone. A win. A version of success that looks clean and confident from the outside. Your thumb pauses. Your chest tightens just a little. You tell yourself good for them. And maybe you even mean it. But a second thought slips in uninvited. I should be further along than this. That's when comparison begins to work on you. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Quietly. You don't feel angry. You feel alert. Focused. Like you've just been reminded to step on the gas. Comparison feels productive because it creates urgency. But urgency without clarity is dangerous. The rush that isn't yours. After that moment, something changes. You open your laptop with a different energy. Your thoughts feel faster. Your breathing feels tighter. You start asking the wrong questions. Why am I moving so slow? Why does it take me longer? What am I missing? You stop listening to your own rhythm. Instead of building step by step, you start skipping steps. Instead of learning deeply, you chase outcomes. You rush your process. Not because you're ready, but because you're afraid. Afraid of being left behind. Afraid of being average. Afraid that if you don't speed up, the window will close. And rushing feels like action, so it convinces you you're doing the right thing. But deep down, something feels off. Your work feels thinner. Your focus feels scattered. Your confidence feels shaky. Because speed borrowed from comparison is not sustainable. Doubting your pace. Comparison doesn't just make you rush. It makes you doubt your pace. You start questioning things that never bothered you before. You wonder if you're too slow, too cautious, too methodical. You forget why you chose this pace in the first place. You forget that you were building something solid. That you were learning instead of performing. That you were laying foundations instead of chasing applause. Now every day feels like a test. Not against your own goals, but against someone else's timeline. And timelines are cruel things to compare. Because you don't see their backstory. You don't see their shortcuts. You don't see their support, their luck, their starting line. You just see the highlight. And you hold your behind the scenes up against their finished frame. No wonder it feels like you're losing. Losing focus on your own growth. This is where the real damage happens. Slowly, almost without noticing, your attention shifts away from your own growth. You stop asking, what do I need right now? What skill am I developing? What progress actually matters to me? And instead you start asking, how does this look compared to them? Will this measure up? Is this impressive enough? Your work becomes reactive. You change direction too often. You abandon ideas too quickly. You chase what's visible instead of what's valuable. And the irony is painful. The more you compare, the less progress you make. Because growth requires focus. And comparison fractures it. Why comparison hurts even when you're winning? Here's something most people don't expect. Comparison doesn't stop hurting when you start doing well. Even when you hit milestones, comparison finds a way back in. You achieve something you once wanted badly. For a brief moment you feel proud, relieved, light. Then you see someone else go further, faster, bigger, louder. And suddenly your win feels smaller. Comparison doesn't care how far you've come. It only cares who's ahead. That's why it's poison. Because no matter how much you grow, there will always be someone doing more, showing more, winning louder. If comparison is your metric, peace will always be temporary. The exhaustion no one talks about. Competing with others is exhausting in a way that's hard to explain. It's not physical exhaustion. It's mental. It's waking up already measuring. It's working with one eye on your progress and the other on someone else's. It's never fully resting because rest feels like falling behind. And the most draining part? You're running a race you never agreed to. With rules you don't control. On a timeline that isn't yours. No finish line ever feels final. The quiet question that changes everything. There comes a moment, usually when you're tired enough, where a different question surfaces. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just honest. Who am I actually trying to beat? That question lingers. Because when you answer it truthfully, you realize something uncomfortable. You're not really competing with them. You're competing with an image. A projection. A version of success you didn't consciously choose. And that realization stings. Because it means you've been outsourcing your self-worth. The only comparison that matters. The only real comparison that matters is this. Are you better than yesterday? Not in a dramatic way. Not in every area. Just better. Did you show up when yesterday you avoided? Did you think a little clearer? Did you respond instead of react? Did you practice instead of postpone? This kind of comparison is quiet. It doesn't spike adrenaline. It doesn't create panic. It creates direction. When you compare yourself to yesterday, the questions change. They become kinder, but also more honest. What did I learn? What did I improve even slightly? What do I need to adjust tomorrow? This comparison doesn't rush you. It grounds you. Competing with who you were. Competing with who you were is a very different experience. It doesn't ask you to be someone else. It doesn't shame your starting point. It respects context. It understands that growth is uneven, that some seasons are fast, and some are slow. When you compete with your past self, progress becomes personal, private. You stop performing for an audience that doesn't know your story. You start building a relationship with yourself. And that relationship is where real confidence comes from. How focus returns. When you let go of comparison, something surprising happens. Your focus comes back. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But steadily. You start noticing your own signals again. You can tell when you're tired instead of pushing blindly. You can tell when you're ready to level up instead of forcing it early. You can tell when you need patience instead of pressure. Your work gets deeper. Because you're no longer rushing to prove something. You're building something. Growth without an audience. There's a certain freedom in growing quietly. In improving without announcing it. In learning without needing validation. You start to enjoy the process again. The small wins. The private breakthroughs. The moments where you realize you handled something better than last time. And no one else has to see it for it to count. That's powerful. Because it means your motivation is no longer fragile. It doesn't disappear when someone else wins. Success redefined. Success starts when you compete with who you were, not who someone else is. Success stops being a race and starts being alignment. Alignment between your values and your actions. Between your goals and your pace. Between who you are becoming and who you used to be. And that kind of success feels different. It's quieter. But it's steadier. It doesn't collapse when comparison shows up because it's not built on it. The peace that follows. When you stop measuring yourself against others, your mind gets quieter. You're not constantly checking where you stand. You're not constantly recalculating your worth. You know where you stand. You stand here. A little stronger than yesterday. A little clearer. A little more capable. And that's enough. Not forever. But for today. Coming back to yourself. Comparison will always be available. The world is designed to feed it to you. But you don't have to drink it. Every time you catch yourself rushing because of someone else's timeline, you can pause. Every time you feel doubt because of someone else's progress, you can redirect. Back to your work. Back to your process. Back to your growth. Because the most dangerous thing about comparison isn't that it hurts your feelings. It's that it pulls you away from yourself. And the moment you return to yourself, your pace, your path, your progress, you regain control. The quiet win. Comparison feels productive. But it's poison. It makes you rush your process. It makes you doubt your pace. It makes you lose focus on your own growth. The only real comparison that matters is this. Are you better than yesterday? And when that becomes your standard, something shifts. You stop chasing. You start building. You stop reacting. You start aligning. You stop competing with the world. And start competing with who you were. And that's where real success begins. Not loudly. Not suddenly. But steadily. One honest day at a time. The kind of person success stays with. Here's the final truth. Success doesn't stay with everyone. It visits many people. It brushes past them. Sometimes it even sits beside them for a while. But it doesn't stay unless the person can carry it. That realization doesn't come early. It comes after watching patterns repeat, both in your own life and in the lives of others. You see people rise fast and fall just as quickly. You see opportunities land in the hands of those who seemed ready, only to slip away months later. At first it's confusing. They had the talent. They had the chance. They had the momentum. So what happened? Over time the answer becomes clearer. Success isn't fragile, but people can be. And when success arrives before someone has grown strong enough to hold it, it eventually exposes the cracks. Success is a weight. No one tells you this at the beginning. Success isn't light. It isn't just praise and progress and comfort. It brings pressure, expectations, visibility, responsibility. When things are small, mistakes are private. When things grow, mistakes echo. More people are watching. More is at stake. More is expected every single day. Some people want success badly, but they underestimate its weight. They imagine freedom without pressure, rewards without responsibility, growth without discomfort. But success doesn't work that way. It amplifies who you already are, who it stays with. Success stays with people who can carry it. People who can handle pressure without breaking themselves or others. People who don't panic when things move fast. People who don't crumble when things slow down. Pressure reveals character. When deadlines tighten. When decisions matter. When failure is visible. Some people react emotionally. They rush. They overcorrect. They blame. They burn themselves out trying to maintain an image instead of building stability. Others stay steady. They breathe. They prioritize. They keep moving. Those are the people success stays with. Handling pressure without losing yourself. Pressure doesn't announce itself. It creeps in quietly. More messages. More decisions. Less margin for error. At first you feel proud. You tell yourself this is what growth looks like. And it is, but only if you're prepared. If you haven't learned how to slow your thoughts under stress, pressure turns into anxiety. If you haven't learned how to rest without guilt, pressure turns into exhaustion. If you haven't learned how to separate your worth from results, pressure turns into fear. People who carry success well don't avoid pressure. They learn how to stand inside it. They don't react to every signal. They don't let urgency replace clarity. They stay grounded enough to respond instead of panic. That steadiness doesn't come from talent. It comes from training. Discipline is the backbone. Discipline is what keeps success from slipping through your fingers. Not dramatic discipline. Not punishment. Not extremes. Quiet discipline. The kind that shows up when no one is watching. The kind that holds structure on days motivation disappears. The kind that keeps standards intact when shortcuts are tempting. Success introduces options. More freedom. More choice. Without discipline, those options become distractions. You start skipping what made you effective. You loosen routines. You delay decisions. You convince yourself you've earned inconsistency. And slowly what built success begins to erode it. People who keep success don't negotiate with discipline. They understand that consistency isn't something you graduate from, it's something you protect. Growth doesn't stop at the top. Another hard truth, success doesn't mean you've arrived. It just means the environment has changed. New challenges appear. New skills are required. Old methods stop working. What got you here won't always get you further. People who lose success often stop growing. They rely on what used to work. They resist feedback. They protect ego instead of expanding capacity. People who keep success stay curious. They learn quietly. They ask better questions. They stay uncomfortable on purpose. They don't assume competence lasts forever. They treat growth as maintenance, not ambition. And that humility keeps them relevant. Remaining grounded when things improve. Success changes how people treat you. More respect. More praise. More assumptions about who you are. That shift can be dangerous if you're not grounded. When external validation rises, internal alignment can slip. You start listening to applause instead of intuition. You start making choices for appearance instead of integrity. People who remain grounded anchor themselves internally. They remember who they were before success. They remember the work that built them. They remember that results don't define character. Grounded people don't shrink, but they don't inflate either. They stay human. Why success starts with you. That's why success starts with you. Not your goals. Not your plans. Not your environment. Those things matter, but they're secondary. Goals don't carry pressure, you do. Plans don't handle failure, you do. Environments don't make decisions, you do. If you haven't built the internal capacity to lead yourself, success will overwhelm you. If you haven't trained your mindset, habits, and emotional control, opportunity will outpace you. Who you become determines what you can sustain. The daily work of becoming. Becoming isn't dramatic. It's daily. It's how you respond when things don't go your way. It's how you treat people when you're tired. It's whether you keep promises when no one is checking. You build yourself in moments no one applauds. Waking up when it would be easier not to. Doing the work when recognition isn't immediate. Staying honest when cutting corners would go unnoticed. Those moments don't feel important, but they are shaping you. Quietly. Permanently. Building quietly. There is power in building quietly. No announcements. No comparisons. No performance. You focus on becoming solid instead of visible. You invest in character instead of image. You strengthen your foundation while others chase attention. Quiet building removes pressure. It allows mistakes without shame. It creates space for real improvement. And over time you notice something. You're calmer. You're clearer. You're more stable. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. When success no longer feels like luck, then one day something shifts. Success shows up, or grows or stabilizes, and it doesn't surprise you. It doesn't feel like luck. It feels earned. Not in an arrogant way. In a grounded way. Like something that matches who you are now. You can handle the pressure. You can maintain the discipline. You can keep growing. You can stay grounded. So success fits. It doesn't feel heavy. It doesn't feel fragile. It doesn't feel borrowed. It feels like the natural outcome of the person you trained yourself to be. The quiet confidence of readiness. This is what real readiness feels like. Not excitement. Not hype. Not validation. Stability. You trust yourself to adapt. You trust yourself to stay steady. You trust yourself not to lose what you've built. And that confidence isn't loud. It's calm. The truth that lasts. Success doesn't stay with everyone. It stays with people who can carry it. People who handle pressure. People who stay disciplined. People who keep growing. People who remain grounded. That's why success starts with you. Not your goals. Not your plans. Not your environment. With who you become daily. Build the best version of yourself quietly. And one day success won't feel like luck. It will feel like the natural outcome of the person you trained yourself to be.